But so what I don't get, and you can look at the owl one right now, is the whole putting, like, showing through the image underneath more. Every time I try to do that and I changed the black and white, I went on the image and the texture, and it would bring in the image, but then there was a black behind it, or it was just black. So I don't know how to do
it. The way it'll probably bring black in, do you have a layer underneath? Do I have all the layers here actually? Yeah, here they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have, I think that this is backwards. So you want to use this texture as your clipping mask, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So what it should be
is, don't you to put the texture under the image?
No, the thing you want to, well, yeah, the texture. No, you are right. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Because I tried that too. I changed them around.
Yeah, the black was there. Where's the original image?
Did I not save it? Oh, I didn't. It's the owl one. Oh shoot, he doesn't belong there. The owl, I didn't save a copy of.
Okay, so I just took the mask off. And there's something weird. So let's do this again. I'm going to close that. And there's some of this is, it looks like, some of this, yeah, some of this is on your image right there. See that? So some of this mark making is actually on this image.
Oh, I see.
So that's probably part of it. And then let's just make a quick, another mask. So let's go. Oh, way too big.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta wait for it to stop. My computer last night, I had to edit this video for the school. God, they sent me like 4K footage. It was like super screwed up footage. And then my computer's just like, I can't handle this anymore, and it just shut down.
Oh no.
God, it took me to like one, and like normally I can edit together something like that pretty quick. It took me like till 1:30 in the morning. God, this thing's still going. Yeah, so it took forever to get it done. And now I'm sort of like over it. It's like I can't fine tune it the way I want. So I'm like, this is it here. I'm sending it
right. Instead of pulling your hair out.
Well, it's like, it's annoying to me because when whenever I work with marketing people, and anybody who's been in my class knows I don't like marketing people.
Yeah.
When they're always behind the 8 ball, the deadline's always ASAP, and I volunteered for this, so it's my own fault. And then you go, okay, well, I need this, and I need this to get the job started. And then they take forever to send you stuff. And it's like, how come you're always in such a hurry when it's somebody else? But when somebody's relying on you, you don't get anything done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on their end.
I'm going to stop this thing. Hang on. Let's do that again. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing the same thing in reverse. I'm holding Option and then going in between. And if you notice, it has the same image, but with a line through it, which means it's going to undo it. So that undid it. Now I'm going to turn this off.
On Windows, for me, I had to hold
Alt, probably.
Yeah, I held Alt, but I also held my touchpad thing.
It should just be Alt, I think. Hang on. All right, so let me get a brush here. This will probably be fine. Make sure it's not huge. There we go. Okay, so let's go here. I'm just going to do a half-ass one here. And that on. Oops. Okay, so let's say that's our texture. So same deal. Yeah, it's just you had some stuff on there, and then if I want to paint it, let's see. Go back to my brush. Yeah, and it's letting me paint around it.
On the edges.
So it's just like what I would do whenever you're doing that kind of thing. Try and kind of make sure. Now I screwed it all up. You know that there's nothing, that your original, your image layer is just clear or just clean. Otherwise, it's gonna then
Right.
you're gonna be doing what you're doing where you're going, I can get rid of that or whatever. And I'd say that in anything you're doing, make sure that you're really at this point start to really manage your layers. Because as you go into this next project that's going to get more complex, that layer management can get really, and you can, for anybody who doesn't know, hang on, grab this one again. It's here. Yeah, so I can make a layer group, a folder here, and I can start popping things into folders. So if you have like 4 layers that are background stuff, you might want to put it into a folder and label that background, label it foreground, label it ship, label it whatever you want. Okay. If you like doing that, because then you just know that those groupings, and it also keeps it in your brain where you're going, okay, that background thing needs to go in there and that needs to go in there. So at least you know where those groups of information are. It'll make it a lot easier. What happens, and I've done this a million times, where I just start going and I'm painting or whatever, and I'm not doing that. And every time I'm going to try something new, I go, I'll make a new layer and try that. And then I forget about it, make a new layer and try something else. And I do this and that. And all of a sudden I've got 50 layers in there that none of them, the names don't make sense. And I start having to go in and select, use my layer selection, the move tool and find things. But the problem with that is if I have an overlay over the whole front, like I do all the time, where I put a gradient and then I put an overlay on it, every time I select something, it's going to pick that one because that's actually covering most of the surface. So it's always going to pick that layer. Then I have to turn that layer off and then start picking other things. So it's a lot easier if I go in there and be very clear in my naming convention on it, and in my grouping, if I want to group it. And just grouping, I would suggest you do. And just group the things together that make sense to you. I mean, I try and keep my stuff super just straightforward, trees, sand, ocean, stuff like that. So I just go, okay, those are the things that I need to, and I never get clever with it or anything, and then I used to do this thing, and it's a weird, I only worked for one company and I really hate it. And this really blew up in my face. So I'd be working on something and the deadlines would be crazy. And then somebody call me and go, hey, can we get this, whatever? And I'd be so furious about it that I'd name the, I'd go, yeah, and I'd put down the phone and I'd go, yeah, and I'd start making a folder for it. And I'd name stuff, all these unrepeatable cuss words, right? And then what happened was, so these are just done in the moment, I was super furious, right? But then a month later when somebody go, hey, where's that file at? I could never find it because they were just off the top of my head going, you bastard, So I never knew what they were named. And then I'd name all the files stupid things like that. So then when I went back to look at it, I was like, I don't know what the hell it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it was just, and that's the dumbest thing in the world.
That's funny.
And I mean, it's really stupid because the only person I'm hurting is me.
Right.
And then I've also done things where I did a big toy job for this company called Moose Toys a couple years ago. And I just had a ton of files with them. And like I'm always telling you guys, keep your layered files, right? So a lot of these were quick sort of ideation sketches, sort of product designy kind of sketches. Because it was for toy product. It was for Shopkins, actually. And so I don't know. Now, this I didn't do that way. I was actually keeping track, because I must have had 1,000 files easily for these people, right? And some of them are abandoned things, and some of them are somewhat finished things, and just all over the place. And I had some sketch or something that I sent to them, and then I think they came back like a week later. So we were going through all this stuff. And then they came back like a week later, and they go, "Hey, we really like this one. So can we go back to this one and maybe just change this?" I don't know how it happened, but I could not find that file to save my life.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and I'm like, oh crap. So the only one I had was, I think, a low-res JPEG that I'd sent to them, you know, because they were on their home offices in Australia, and I was working with somebody here and the Australian office. So all I could find was this low-res version of it, and I had to change some stuff on it. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to recreate this because I never could find it. It was just weird. I know I have it, but I couldn't find it. So be really clean and smart in your naming convention and how you organize your files. Because if you don't do that, man, even just yourself, you're going to regret it. You might have something you really think was cool that you did, and you're like, man, I don't know where that thing is, you know? So just be careful with it.
Okay, but I have like another question. So when you choose an image, do you have to choose one with a white background?
No, it's just going to mask whatever you want. Or it's just going to mask over whatever that image is in theory underneath it. I know it's on top of it, which is weird, but I always think of the Clippy mask as being on top, even though it's not. And like if you work in Illustrator, Illustrator does, it's much more straightforward in Illustrator. You're putting a shape over something. It's basically like a stencil. Like you have a stencil, you can see through it, and you're putting that over a drawing, basically, or an image. Or whatever. And that's how I think of it. And it's just weird how in Photoshop they put the mask underneath it. I'm assuming that's a programming thing. It just works better that way or something. I'm not really sure why. Doesn't matter. The main point being all these different things, you know, we're constantly talking about non-destructive, and that's a really good non-destructive tool. I'm playing around with it right now because I'm playing around with that ship image that we're playing around with, and you know, just taking it to sort of finishy kind of thing. And I'm using like a tattered edge. I've tried all these different edges, just screwing around. And then now I'm going back into the painting and playing around. And I love having some illustration that's just, I can keep fiddling with. It's like, I always say it's like my version of crossword puzzle. Like I just go, oh yeah, I can play with that a little bit, you know? And then digitally, what's nice is number one, it's for a demo. The part I need to do for the demo is done now. To me, it's just fun. And I might try new things that I don't normally try. So I have something to experiment with, and then at some point I'll band it and do something else, you know. And I like to have a traditional thing going on all the time too. So whatever. I like to have something to fiddle around with all the time. So you did this color replacement thing on this bug?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I just thought, okay, let's change the color of the ladybug. So, and it turned out pretty good. And then I liked how I noticed that you could still adjust the image and do, you know, just adjust the image a little bit. It changes what your color replacement is too. Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say yesterday on this, hang on a second, this Clippy mask thing. Hang on a sec. Let's get this again. Not that. What do I do with my images? Hang on. Yesterday was the 7th, okay. Or no, the 8th. Should have it.
Yeah.
I should have all this stuff super organized. I know what I'm doing. Let's go. I forgot to mention this. Oh, it's here. So we'll go back to our lion. Oh no, let's go to the other lion. Yeah, let's use this one. And then again, I want to use this again. And so what I was going to say is, I like the way it lets you sort of keep working on these things. Let's go. Actually, I'm going to take both of these like I did yesterday. Hang on. I screwed up my, hang on. There we go. Yeah. I'm off today. I don't know why. So, you know, you could come in here. So I'm going to put this on top just so I can figure out where I want to place it. Hang on. There goes it. So I'm going to say it's about there. I'll pull it back down here. And option. See, now there's overlay there. So that's, I'm going to make this a little bigger. So it doesn't do that because that's the edge of my image. Okay, that's better. You know, and then I could come in here. You got to be careful with this stuff, but look at my oil paint. Maybe add some of that to it.
That looks cool.
And white, right now it's not too bad because it's just sort of a textural idea. I'm not sort of going like a little, like that's a little too much to me. And then let's go a little overboard with it because now we can start combining these things. Like that's a lot right there. So let's go a lot. And let's see what this does. Ooh, that's kind of nice right there. See how that's just more of a textural idea? Yeah?
Right, yeah. And that's filter, right?
This is just oil paint filter. It's under stylization.
Okay.
But what I like about this right now is the way I'm using it, it doesn't feel like, ooh, it's a big filter. It just feels textural. So I also could put like, you know, I might lay a canvas texture over that or something like that and get sort of a, let's go bigger here. But I really like that canvas or that just that texture look because it doesn't feel so filtery to me. But if I went further, let's see if we can get this to go. Like even that's not bad. None of these are bad actually. These are pretty good. Let's see what this does. So all I'm doing is I'm just swiping, whatever you call it, sliders. So it gets a bigger idea here where you start to see the brush marks a little more. Let's go all the way up. And I have to admit, it doesn't look bad. Let's go to bristle detail. Let's push that way up. So I'm trying to push it up where it's a little too much. So, and let's play with the lighting a little bit. So let's say, okay, that's pretty heavy. Okay, so let's say there, but then I might go, okay, it looks a little filtery. It's actually not that bad, but if it was really heavy, because you can get this pretty built up to pretty heavy, then I still might come in here to break that up and either go, I'm gonna get one of my oil brushes. Like I've been liking this one a lot lately. Hang on, I think it's this one. And I could pick up a color here. This might be too big, but I'd probably do this on another layer, but it doesn't matter right now. And I might pick up maybe that brighter color. And I could still come in here and kind of paint over some of these spots and get sort of my own sort of paint idea over that, or I could come in here and soften some of these out so it's not so uniform. and start to sort of use that as a starting point for a sort of oil look, but I'm going to still get it out of the filter thing because I'm still going to hand paint a little bit over it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And also what I can do is I can make some of these brush strokes go like here. This built up paint is kind of nice, but it's really random. So I'm going to make sure that I shape it a little bit. That kind of helps it a little bit. And I'll leave the highlights a little thicker, which is what paint's going to do. And then I might go back to here. I like this one quite a bit. So in my highlighted areas, I might, not just there, but a lot in there. I might come in here and just give it my own little pass on brushwork, but use that as my starting point. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
So the thing is with these filters, man, especially if somebody goes, like this technique, if I was a freelancer, like this up here looks pretty good. Like it's following the right sort of thing, but I'm just gonna soften some edges. This is really nice here. But you see how it's starting to feel more like an oil painting than a filter?
Yeah. So
I might do something like that, you know, if I wanted to get that kind of look, or somebody sometimes you'll get, you know, I didn't do this kind of stuff very much. So I didn't get these kind of calls very much, but like, especially a graphic designer or something, they might get somebody who will call them and go, or even an illustrator, usually, you know, because people don't know the difference, to be honest. So they might call you up and go, hey, we've got a person retiring and we want like an oil portrait of them, you know, like a retirement, whatever. And then you go, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then you go, well, okay, so what's the budget? $50. And then you go, okay, I'm not doing anything for $50. But like, here's what I will do for this much money. I will give you something that looks sort of like an oil painting. It'll be kind of stylized and everything. But like, you want me to do an oil painting, dude? I'm not even going to pick up a brush for under 2,500, 33,000, whatever. But I can give you a and then you go, what are you going to use it for? Oh, it's going to be on there on the company's website or something. So you don't need an oil painting. You know what I mean? You just need this. It's fine. And then you can, you know, do that. And then you can, and those smaller jobs for people who are freelancers, I wasn't really a freelancer. And I did different kinds of work. So it was a little different for me. But if I was a freelancer, I'd be like, yeah, I'll pick up $500 and do that. And I'll spend hour and a half on it, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you want to have, what you don't want to do is just go, yeah, I'll give you an oil portrait, and you just slap a filter on it. And it's just like, okay, that just looks like a filter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, having said that, here's the weird thing is most of the world nowadays, they're at least exposed somewhat to Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. They know too much stuff, lay people. But at the same time, most people, they don't look at something and go, hey, that's the oil filter. Because they don't know. They're not designers. Now, they might be if they fiddle around in Photoshop or whatever. You know, so I want to make sure that it has my artistic touch on it, and I'm bringing something to that. That can get me ahead of the game a little bit and cut it off and go, okay, now I got some brushwork to start with, and I can start managing the brushwork and all that kind of stuff and adding to it and softening it and whatever. So it just gets you there a little faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you wanted to paint some more of the texture back in, like you wanted more of the texture look, how would you bring that back in?
I bring that back in with my texture, with my oil brushes, my impasto brushes. Because what I want here, like this, if I go, that's got a texture to it. Now I'd have to go and figure out which one I want to use for any particular job. Like if I took some of this out, because I would soften some of this up. Like what I'm keeping is the stuff that looks like real oil brush work. Like this to me right here doesn't, so I'm going to soften that up a little, just really subtly. This in here isn't too bad. That's not too bad. I'm going to give it my own little smudge here and there. You know, I'm going to make sure that like this right here is pretty nice. This right here is starting to feel like a pattern, so I'm going to get rid of that. Anywhere it feels like a pattern, I'm going to get rid of it. Like in here, I'm going to soften that up. Soften this up. You know, and then I go back to a brush, like a fat, oily brush, and go, do I need, like here, I don't even care about a texture. Like this is fine right here, because I want to have soft and hard passages. I want to have passages that have a lot of brush work. But if I want to bring, let's say, some of this light work into here, you know, then I get an oil, you know, one of my oil brushes, because now I'm just sort of making new. I don't know why that's so gray. Oh, that's right. Hang on.
What I meant was that from your clipping mask texture, because you were saying yesterday that you can paint the image back in, or you can paint the text.
Well, that's what we just did when we started this.
Okay.
You know, you're on the mask now.
Yeah.
You're painting the mask in. You know what I mean?
Oh, but okay.
But you got to be on the mask layer. You have to be on this layer here.
Right.
Not on this. Because
Right.
this, I'm just painting on the image.
But how you use black, you know, how you ship the boxes, like the black is a foreground, and that means you're painting in something.
Yeah, I think it follows the same logic.
Because when I
tried to do that,
yeah, when I tried to do that with the other one, I tried both the image and the texture. Whenever I painted black, it brought back in the image more, but then there's black behind it.
Yeah, the black behind it thing, I'm not sure what that was. I don't know if you had something going on behind it that did that, because it shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or it tells me you were painting on the paint layer, not on the mask layer.
On the paint layer, not the mask layer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually that's the problem, because like right now I'm painting on the mask layer. If I go out here, I'm not going to do anything because it's being masked. So anyway, I can start to get a nice kind of oil look. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I know I have some in here that are really fat brushes, but I don't know which ones they are. I don't like that one. Sometimes they have brushes in here and they go, oh, it's this. And you're like, that doesn't look anything like that.
Right.
Which is weird. You know, I do a little bit of, and you know, I probably want to have, see, I don't like that one either. I think I like this one quite a bit. Yeah, that one's pretty nice. You know, but this can really, I mean, I could really tweak this endlessly and really start to get a nice look to it. You know, what I always see with, and they actually have some filters that are pretty good. Like there's some, I judged an art show one time. I don't know who they were for. Sometimes people call you and they go, we judge a show, and they pay you for it and all that. And from across the gallery, I looked at it and I go, wow, that's a nice watercolor. And then I get up close to it and I'm like, it was a filter. It was like some kind of filter. And I have to admit, it was a pretty damn good filter. There was one out there and it's probably still out there, that did a pretty good job. But I was like, how dare you put this into an art show? How dare you frame this and put this in an art show? You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a painting, dude. And this doesn't belong here, you know? And it was just like, are you trying to fool everybody? I don't really understand what's going on here, you know?
Yeah. All right.
So I'm assuming it was. I don't know. All right. So that's more masks business. Who else has questions about this or about the ship thing or whatever?
Mike, I had a quick question.
Sure.
So while you're working on the lion, I'm assuming you're also using the same concept of, you know, big themes and then moving on to smaller and smaller themes. Okay.
100%. I am never going to come in here when I'm doing, and what we're talking about here, I don't care if we're using this as a starting point. It doesn't matter. We're still talking about painting, really, right? Or I'm still talking about the understanding of it. Okay. I'm never going to come in here and start to go, you know, okay, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to go and grab, you know, this. I'm going to start putting highlights on things. I'm not going to start there, obviously, right? I'm going to start with bigger themes or bigger shapes. So I'm going to go into like this area right here. This area right here. So like that kind of area is where I'm going to start and go, all right, I'm probably first going to go, I like it, but it looks a little uniform. So I'm going to break it up a little bit. I'm going to soften some of this. And then I might go, okay, so I might just probably leave this alone for now. Why am I doing that? Because, you know, I don't want the focus all right here on his fur. I want the focus all here. So I'm probably going to give you my fattest finished out brushwork sort of in the face area, right?
Yeah.
and let all that drop off. So I might come like this too starts to look uniform. It's not going the right direction to me. Now it feels a little more Rembrandt-y where it's like sort of random texture. Now there I might go in and go, I'm just going to hit it a little bit with maybe I'll pull some of this into it. And I'm starting to sort of just put a little bit of, I don't like keeps doing that. There. You know, a little bit more of my mark making in it. Like I don't like that. And then certain places I might just go, I want to emphasize that little zygomatic archy kind of thing right there. Maybe I'll do the same thing over here. You know, and then here I like that, but maybe I'll just brush over this a little bit to break up the that's too bright. To break up the brushwork. I don't want the brushwork to look the same everywhere. And then I'm going to soften these two edges between each other, like right here. So I'm going to go in and do that kind of stuff. You know, big. I'm going to find a big area and sort of go, okay, that needs to just soften. That needs a little bit of this, that. And then I'm going to work down at the end. I'm going to put in like highlights and my smallest shapes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're making the task at hand a little less intimidating by chunking it up into, you know, bite-sized pieces.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Like, and you know what that is? That's just methodology. Okay, knowing your methodology and giving you a methodology, or you know, and again, you're going to learn a lot of methodology. I'm giving you a very simple, basic. In fact, I didn't invent any of this stuff. It's been around forever. But the idea of big to small does knock down the intimidation factor. Because just like if you watch that Rutkowski, you guys can hear me, right? You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you watch that Rutkowski video, he's just going big old shapes and then working into the shapes, man. Hang on, I got an unstable thing. He's just working into those shapes, okay? And then building, you know, smaller and smaller shapes into it. And at the end of it, it looks like a very intimidating painting. But if you watch that process, you go, okay, I kind of get that. It's big shapes to small shapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing we're doing here. The only thing we're doing here is we have a starting point where I'm just looking at it and going, I don't want this uniformity of brushwork, but I really do like here where it gives me these fat brush marks. And if I manage this together, I can actually make it look pretty close to a, you know, like an oil painting. I just don't want this, again, this repetition of brush marks. Like here, it's getting like real swirly, which is okay, but I don't want it everywhere. I want my brushwork in here. And again, the only reason I would do this is just to speed up my process, you know, or it just might be the right solution, to be honest. Like some of these brush marks are not bad. And I might do this on an illustration. I absolutely would do this on an illustration where I just go, I'm going to give it an oil look and just go in and do the same thing I'm doing right now, you know, especially if it's a speed thing. Or especially if it was, I had this a long time ago, I had this meeting with this guy who was doing an independent movie, and I met with him. And the story was about a guy who was an artist, okay? And he goes, I want you to do all the paintings for the movie. And these independent movies, man, they always say they have no budget and all that stuff. So I met with this guy, and we're sitting there talking about it, and I go, so how many paintings you talking about? And he goes, like, I think it was like 16. And I go, what's the budget? Well, we don't have a big budget. It's probably like $2,000. I go, I'm not doing 16 paintings for $2,000, forget it. And then he goes, oh, well, yeah, but you're going to, you know, if this movie takes off or anything, everybody's going to know you're the guy who did it. And I go, yeah, I don't care. I want to get paid. You know what I mean? But what I told him at the time, and this is, I mean, digital was around then, but not to the extent it is now. And I go, look, here's what I could do. I could probably digitally do some stuff. Then I can print it out, wet mount it down onto canvas, and then hit certain spots of it with acrylic and stuff like that, or maybe even oil. But I'm not going to paint the whole painting. I go, and $2,000 ain't going to cut it even for that. But I mean, I can get it so on screen it looks like a painting. And but now I might do this and just sort of really use this as a starting point and really manipulate it and get some really fat brushwork on it, and still maybe print it out and still maybe put some impasto brushworks all over it, make it look somewhat like a real painting. But like, you know, people, and by the way, people do that all the time, especially in the entertainment industry. They go, oh, we don't have a big budget. And then they dangle a carrot in front of you and go, but if this happens, then you're going to get all this work later. That's the oldest BS thing ever. Don't listen to that. Does that make sense? I had somebody call me one time to do not only a set design it was an NBC kids show that they were going to pitch. Okay. And this is another example of that. And I always worked somewhere. So I go, I'll meet you guys at lunch. I think they were in Burbank and I was in Glendale. I worked in Glendale. Anyway, so they had this thing. It was probably Thursday. And they go, we need a set. Here's the theme of the set. We think we like your style and everything. We'll work good. And I go, okay, what's the budget? And I'm not kidding you. They told me the budget was something like somewhere between $200 and $500. Oh, and before that happened, they told me that this was a rush job, like everything. They needed it by Monday. I think it was Thursday or Friday. I go, is there any sets or any designs at all yet? No. I go, okay, so I'm starting from scratch on Thursday or Friday. They need it by Monday. And what's the deliverables? Deliverables is a bunch of concept paintings and all that kind of stuff. Set design. And I go, okay, what's the budget? And then they go, the budget's like, I don't know, $200 or $500, some ridiculous number. Well, that's probably a good 5,000 to 7,000, maybe more job, maybe even 15,000. I don't know. It's the only time I ever lost my temper in a meeting, probably. And I just go, I can't believe you wasted my time bringing me out here. I don't know. I go, number one, it's a rush job, which means I'm going to charge you more for it. And that's your budget. Like, I'm not going to even think about picking up a pencil for that. You know what I mean? And then they did that. They go, well, we're pitching this to NBC, and if it goes, you're going to have all this work. And I go, you know what, man? That's the oldest line in the book. And they just want to get cheap labor, And then I taught a long time ago, like 20 years ago, whatever it was, at Woodbury. And then I stopped for like 15 years or whatever. But I was teaching a night class at Woodbury while I don't know where I was working at the time. Then they go, you got any students who could do it? And I go, I'm not even going to suggest a student for that. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So just be careful, because for some reason people have this thing where they don't want to pay for design work. And I argue, this is such a skill heavy thing to do. And it's also a thinking heavy thing to do, because you're coming up with conceptual ideas and solutions. And it's a very valuable skill set. So don't let people, once you build that skill set to a really high level, it's valuable, and know that it's valuable. Okay. Because these people can't do this. That's why they're calling you. Okay. All right. Any questions on this little oil thing? We're all good?
No, that was a good demo. That actually was pretty interesting. I never really thought of it like that.
Yeah. And you know what's good about this? Like, do this. Okay, so here's another thing. I used to be a little more puristy than I am now. I don't believe in any of that anymore. I don't think I ever really did, and I'd go, look, but I used to be real hard ass about, like, you got to paint and, like, learn how to paint. And I still believe that, by the way.
Yeah.
But then I would go, yeah, that digital painting, that doesn't translate over to your traditional painting. Yes, it does. Because what we're talking about here are the principles of just simple painting ideas, okay? And if you're aware of edges and you start understanding it in this environment, when you go into a painting class, you're going to be a little bit ahead of the curve in your thinking and sort of what you're going for. Because if you don't have a target in your head of what you're going for, and that can be career-wise or an image, okay? You're not going to hit the target. If you don't know what the target is, how in the hell are you going to hit it, right? You're just floundering away like I did when I was learning how to paint. And I'd go 10 horrible paintings, 1 half-ass painting, 5 terrible paintings, 1 okay painting. I had no methodology. I had no understanding of what I was going for. Didn't know anything about hard and soft edges. Didn't know any of that stuff. If I'd have known that, I would have had some landing spot in mind, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so all this stuff, it's just, and I don't think it's a bad idea if you're kind of new to this, especially if you're coming in, you go, I want to do illustration or concept design or any of that stuff. Go in, and find, you can do it with photography, it doesn't matter. Throw the filter on and start playing with your edges and stuff. So you're starting to train your brain into how you want to handle that sort of thing, and where a soft edge makes sense is in relation to a hard edge and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of this painting thing, because that's digital painting. This is, it's Photoshop, but we're learning all these tools in Photoshop. But I don't think it's any good to learn tools in Photoshop if you don't know how to use them artistically. If you don't know how to use them artistically, who cares? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So anyway, we could get a nice little build up here. And this would be also fun. Actually, I think I'm going to save it because I'm going to, there's a bunch of brushes in here that I haven't used in my oil brushes. So I'd probably just use this to go and explore my oil brushes on this. It's something I don't care about. And just go, ooh, that's a really nice one. If I find a couple of them in there, I'll drag those into my favorites, or I'll create a new folder and go, these are my favorite. My favorite out of the oil brushes, here's my favorites. Hang on. But this would be a good way to experiment with your brushes also, and find a handful that you really like. I like to keep all those brushes on deck, but then use, you know, just a handful of them. Okay. Let's close that. Oh. Okay. Questions on any other questions on that? No? Wow, that's good. Okay, what about the other thing? Did you guys see the video yesterday?
Yep.
Is it all making sense?
Yeah, a quick question, Mike. So I noticed you use the color layer mode to start adding color on there.
Yeah.
What's the difference between using that and doing it with multiply, like what we did
I
before?
don't think multiply will give you that color overlay thing like that. I think multiply
Okay.
will give you more of like a hard shadow kind of thing.
I see. Okay.
Okay, what the color layer basically does is it just basically turns it into a glazing layer. And in real painting, it's just like watercolor, okay? Watercolor you don't go opaque with watercolor. So if I have grass and I have blue, I might optically mix it on the paper or whatever, where I just put down a light blue, instead of mixing it on my palette sometimes with watercolor or anything transparent. Instead of mixing it on my palette where I go, I'm gonna try and get that perfect blue, I'm gonna go, that's a really blue kind of green. So I'm gonna come in here and do a wash, like a cobalt or something. And then, you know, let that dry. And then I'm gonna go over the top of it with some really acidic green and push it into like a sunlit acidic greeny kind of thing, because it's stained glass. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Putting blue, then I'm putting and let it dry, and then put a wash of yellow over it, and it's going to start going green. You know, it's transparent. That's the same thing we're doing, and that same technique is done with oil. I think I've said this before, where you just build the whole painting in black and white, let it dry, and then you just start glazing color. On all glazed color means is you got it thinned down where it's somewhat transparent. It's not opaque.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Okay, so then you're just kissing that thing with all your color. And again, the thing I love about it is just a little bit of magic to that, where you just put that color over it and all the brushwork's already there, and you're like, whoa, that's starting to look cool already. In like 15 minutes, it starts looking cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, almost like tinting it,
Yeah, it is tinting it.
kind of.
It's exactly what it is. And then, you know, you could use the same technique to do exactly what you just said. Like if you look at old, like up here, they have a lot of these old postcard images and stuff from up here, because it's a resort town. This is a resort town. And they have this really weird color look to them, because they were done in like the, I don't know, 30s, 40s. I don't know when they were done. And they had some process where they color tinted these photographs. They weren't real color photographs. So they had this real weird kind of look to them. Some of it might have been a printing process thing, but some of it I think they just went in and like kind of hand tinted them with, because there used to be paint and pencils and all these materials, so you could manipulate photography, you know, and then they'd reshoot it and all that stuff. And they have this real weird grainy look to them. They're really cool looking. But like you might go, I want to do that for a design project. I want to get that old tinted photography look, you know, and then you could do it that way, you know, and then you do all this color manipulation and maybe do a color overlay and start tinting these layers, just like they did with the old thing. Maybe put a little grain on it and all that stuff, and all of a sudden you've got this really nice, I mean, there's just so many different uses for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is really nice is sometimes you can go in, and if you're going to hit something, I might hit it with some, I don't know, real subtle watercolory kind of things where maybe I'm not super manipulating the photograph, but I'm changing it in a way that's just kind of interesting and a little different than everything else. It's just all, to me, it's all about, the problem with Photoshop and all this software is that you can start to fall into the trap of, just like we're just using the oil filter, of going, okay, boom, oil painting. It's like, that ain't fooling nobody, dude. It doesn't look like an oil painting. It looks like you put a filter on it. Now, it's not bad to use any of these tools and bring them into your own artistic point of view, but you got to have, and that's why I talked about paths in here. That's why I'm telling you, like, I don't give a damn whatever visual discipline you're in. I don't care if it's illustration, photography, I don't care. Like, get a range of point of views. Now, that doesn't mean in your education go down and chase every shiny object you see, because that's also not smart. But I think it's really smart if you're an entertainment design person, because this is where I see this falling apart. They just want to play on digital tools all the time, and it's like you have no idea what you're doing with painting or illustration or image making or any of that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So go take a painting class, or like actually, if I was going to do it, I would take my traditional meeting. And I'm not doing this. I don't try and recruit for my classes, but that is a really good paint handling class, and that's really all it is we're just going watercolor, acrylic, gouache, mixed media. How do you handle these materials, and how does paint work? So it's kind of the same. It's a good fundamental painting class, okay? And then you can learn those. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, that traditional media class I took definitely complements what I'm doing now with your Photoshop class, and it really helps me demystify Photoshop and just like work with it, and it's definitely helping me solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, because when you solve those problems in the real world, there's also a lot of things that happen. Like when you put watercolor down and you throw another, into a wet wash, and you go, God, that's really cool. Then you go, then when you go to here, you go, I want that kind of thing. And you understand it fundamentally. So then you go, oh yeah, I got a couple of good watercolor brushes. And if I kind of hit it with that blender, it gets that effect, and you're not, I think it's a problem when you're emulating something that's emulating something, right? So like, whenever you make a copy of something, it degenerates by a generation, right? So if I take a photocopy, this beautiful thing, and I photocopy it, now it's a generation down. Now I photocopy that, it's a generation down, on and on and on, right? Until you have this horrible image, right? And I think there's a problem where you're getting away from craft, the craft of this, the craft of your craft, okay? Because I'm a big believer in, I love craft. I love process. I love people who are knowledgeable in the process. I don't care what it is. I don't care at all about cars. But if a guy is really passionate about fixing up cars and all that kind of stuff, I can listen to him talk for hours, just because I get it. I get that mindset, okay? So I think knowing your skill set, that's what makes you free, and that's what makes you have your own point of view, okay? Because if you go in, like Ian wants to go into product design, and nobody's going to want you to come into product design and go, hey, just give us mediocre ideas. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to go, I want something innovative, man. I want this. You got to give it. Now, I'm giving you the problem. You got to solve it. And if you're not a creative thinker or whatever, and even with this kind of stuff, like we're having in here, I want a little dose of problem solving, because if you guys aren't problem solving, you're not getting it, okay? And that's why I like having all these discussions where, like I forgot, it's like, because that little oil thing that I just did, I just thought that yesterday before class. I go, oh, this would be cool to talk about. And then I forgot about it, right? So that's another reason why I like having these discussions, because sometimes you guys will bring something up and go, oh, I never thought of that. It's also telling me where, maybe I'm not being clear in how I'm conveying that information. And I also want, but one of our big things now is to get this sort of, that kind of thinking into the whole program holistically, where you guys are going, I really want to know how to paint, not just get on a Cintiq and draw superheroes, because really my thinking is just an extension of video game playing. And the Cintiq seems kind of like a video game console, only I'm going to make images on it. And it's like, who cares about that, okay? I think you want to, at least my opinion, you want to approach this artistically and have your own point of view and all that kind of stuff, and be adaptable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you go onto a Nickelodeon show, then you gotta stylistically work in that world, which I think is fun, where you go, okay, I'm working on Gravity Falls. Here's, you know, they're going to go, here's kind of how we arrived at this idea. You know, here's our design Bible. Here's our, here was our internal thinking, our process thinking. We arrived here. Here's our character sheets. Here's our model sheets. Here's our blah, 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 all this stuff. Now, if you're going to draw the characters or whatever, they got to be a model. You know, then you're working in their world, but then they're going to go, hey, we have an episode that's, and I'm just making all this up, that they're going to go to this new environment. And it's like, okay, now I've got to think of this whole new environment based on that world. It can't all of a sudden be Mike's point of view. It's got to be the creator's point of view of that show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you're still being creative and working within it. And then you're contributing to something that goes out in the world, you know, and I've known people who've worked on all kinds of stuff. Well, like when Steven Silver came to the school, right? I mean, how many of you guys were there and going, oh my God, that's my childhood nostalgia. You're the guy who designed Kim Possible, you know? And they get that all the time where it's almost like they played that role or something. And people are like, man, you brought that childhood memory into my life. You're the guy who generated. I think that's really interesting, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to live out there forever, right?
Yeah.
And different generations will find it and love it. And it keeps, you know, like Frozen, that's just going to roll through the next 100 years. You know what I mean? Or any of those shows like that. Okay?
Yeah.
Make yourself valuable. If you're not valuable, nobody's going to hire you. And be creative in your thinking. When teachers give you a creative project, really chew on it. You know what I mean? Like maybe at the end of this, maybe we'll do a final that's just, I'll give you guys a free project. We'll discuss it, make sure that it's, you know, robust enough to bother with. And maybe we'll do that, you know. Could be something for your portfolio, could be whatever. Maybe that's what we'll do for a final. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Does anybody have any questions about that whole ship thing?
One thing about the ship, Mike, I noticed you started putting purple on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just to kind of bring the ship out, like push it forward, or is it just kind of like because it's in a warm and cool environment?
You're talking about like when I put that gold stuff on the ship?
No, it was just like the purple. Like there was like some purple painting or like purple light that you put on it. Like you did some shade of purple.
What I'm doing there is I'm drawing on like a lot of stuff I've experienced, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying things, to be honest. So a lot of that times it's that thing where I'm telling you, I know a lot of stuff in the back of my head, obviously, but I'm disconnecting from it. And part of what that was like a lot of time, and I'm really playing with the lighting in that thing, because I'm going, well, it could be some light over here, whatever. If I was doing that for a job, I would have done a little comp and all that stuff and figured it out. The purple thing is I'm going, we're in that blue shadowy area. There's some warmth going on around here. Purple could make sense. It might, you know, and then when I put that gold stuff on there, I noticed like gold sometimes when it gets certain types of light, it'll, you know, and it's not gold, it's actually brassy. It could go a little purpley and I can cool it down. So what I'm trying to do is introduce maybe another cool into that environment. So I'm not always just pulling the same blue out of the sky or whatever that's hitting everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're working with the complements.
I'm working with an analogous color. You know, they're close. You know, blue and purple are fairly close.
Oh, blue and purple, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and then when I'm doing the lighting, just the big idea of warm, cool, a lot of times I'm just starting with a complement with that, you know?
Yeah.
And now you could go further with that and go, you know, if you're going to figure things out and go, you know, if you're figuring this out for like, you know, where you had to sustain lighting throughout a few different scenes or something like that, then I might go, okay, well, let's start with, I want to have this warm, cool thing, but let's do a quadratic relationship here. So at least I got to start on 4 colors I can kind of start with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or color gammeting. You can look at that from Gurney. I mean, that's starting to get into all kinds of color stuff. And again, take a color theory class. If you don't understand color theory, you are dead, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to take that with Todd eventually.
Yeah, that's really important if you want to do anything in color. And then, so my logic is always like, yes, have all that color theory back there, but then throw it out, get a paint box, go out and paint from life, because that's the best teacher. Once you have that knowledge, then you go out and go, how do I apply this? And then the reason I say go out and paint from life, you can just get a little watercolor sketchbook and a little cheap watercolor set. The reason I say go out and paint from life is that is the purest light you are ever going to see is on location, right? If I look at a photograph, man, that is a whole different ballgame. And you do not know how to translate a photograph until you've worked from life and go, like when you look at a photograph, it averages things. So a lot of the shadows are going to go almost black. And you're looking at it going, that shadow wouldn't be that color, because you know you're outside all the time, and you go, oh, I'm going to throw a little purple, a little warmth back there, because that's actually what it'll feel like. It's dappled light, because I see that. And you're just cataloging this stuff. And the reason I like working from life all the time is it's data entry for your brain, man. Like if you sit there and paint something and study it, it really gets locked in the brain. And then when you're doing something like this ship thing, you go, I think a little purple could work in there. And some of that purple, by the way, is based on stage lighting, because I used to go to jazz gigs every Thursday. And
That's what I thought as well when I was watching that. I'm like, I think he's doing some stage lighting there.
It's total stage lighting.
Okay.
It's total stage lighting. Because if you look at a really hot orange on somebody on stage, a lot of times the shadow goes super screaming purple. Now I'm not going that purple, and then I'm all, and then I'm taking all the things into consideration, but it's a lot of stage lighting. And then, and then I brought some warmth into it towards the end on the right. So I'm going, this side of the ship's getting a lot of warmth. So I can just say there's a little light over here.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't have to over-explain everything. Just like that warm light that's on the rocks in the foreground. There's two reasons I want to do that. A, it looks cool. It's warm and it pulls forward. And B, I want to highlight all that texture on those rocks. I think the texture looks cool, right?
Yeah.
Because that kind of stuff, the textural stuff and rocks and all that kind of stuff, that's the stuff that used to screw me up when I was first learning how to paint. I'm like, how do you paint a rock? And then until you finally figure out and you go, oh, it's a big abstraction. It's a bunch of abstract shapes. You know what I mean? That just have a lot of texture, and then you just kind of learn how to emulate it or whatever by going out and looking at it, right?
Yeah.
And then bring all that, because the problem with the digital tools is that they become sort of the be all end all of everything, which I think is weird. It's become like the only medium for like entertainment people. And it's like, no, it isn't. It's not that you're not going to work in that medium. Yes, you are. But what you're not seeing is the wealth of knowledge of all these things that the people who are doing these things that you like are bringing to the table. Like if you look at Wilder Tulp, or you look at Thomas Fluharty, you look at Peter Dessab, you look at Carter Goodrich, you look at Nico Marley, you look at Greg Rakowski, you look at Craig Mullins, you look at all these monster people. Like Craig Mullins, you think he could do that if he didn't know how to paint? You think Greg Rakowski could know how to paint? I doubt it. You know what I mean? Because what are you doing? You're emulating an emulation of real painting. Just go learn the real painting, and then just paint, right? Like you're not emulating something.
Yeah.
You're just going, I know how to paint. So the reason I like to keep all my tools simple when I'm working is I really just I don't want to overcomplicate this stuff where I start digitizing the crap out of everything and start to make my stuff look like everything else. I just want to come in with a couple simple tools and make images. And then, then I'm going to leverage the power of all this digital stuff. But I want it to work on its own first before I go and do anything funky with it, right?
Yeah, I try to just think like, just ignore that it's photoshopped. It's just another piece of paper, just gonna go in and
it just doesn't
lay
matter.
it down. Yeah.
You're drawing on a surface, or whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's just, that's exactly right. It's another medium. If I pick up watercolor, I don't then go, oh, now it's watercolor. I just, I just jump into watercolor. You know what I mean? Or whatever medium it is. And that's all I look at with this. And yes, of course you're going to use digital tools for all this stuff, because it just makes sense, and it's really liberating, because again, stuff that I did a long time ago where I go, I need to do a really finished out perspective drawing. I probably wouldn't even do that anymore. I'd probably just go in and start making, I'd have a basic, it's just like this thing. You saw in the beginning of it, I started with basically nothing to start the scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm doing is just going, okay, there's a big shape back there, the building and the landmass. That's one big silhouette. One big silhouette in the front with the rocks. One big silhouette with the ship. Everything just started as a silhouette, right? And then you go, then you build into it. And then you go, oh, that ship needs to be a little bigger. And whatever, right? To build that, those basic shapes to make sure they're working. One thing I love about digital is that you can go foreground, middle ground, background, rocks, ship, background. Just, you're doing them all black and white. And then you can go back and go, okay, those rocks need to get a little darker, go into your levels and darken them up and make sure it's separating from a value perspective. And then you're okay to get going, right?
Yeah.
And it just makes it so fast, It just makes it so fast. All right, what else? Who else has questions about that? All right, so everybody's good? Everybody's getting it?
I just wanted to wait until everybody got their question in, but I do have one more question, Mike.
Sure.
I also noticed that you used an adjust gray layer at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
How do you do that traditionally?
I would just probably go in with a darker value. You can't really. I mean, I guess there's a way you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
What that does is, I would probably go in. I would mix a little darker value, but I'd probably keep it fairly transparent. Not as transparent,
Yeah.
not super transparent, but a little transparent. But I'm gonna probably go, okay, the rocks are warmish. I want to mix like kind of a warmish value, and boom, boom, boom. It's just glazing of that. In this case, a darker value. So if you do the gray thing, for the most part, it's really nice because you can dance over and go, I want to do a little dark here. Is that too much? Does that work? And then what I like about it is that I can find a mid-value gray, put it on multiply, and then it just starts doing shadow values, picking up the color underneath a little bit. And I can, instead of me having to go find every shadow value for everything, I can just sort of hit everything. And then I'm probably going to paint over it some more and all that kind of stuff. But it lets me go and do a pass and go. And you'll find this out a lot because I think I did it in that. Where I go, I'm going to hit this over here darker. And you go, whoa, that really makes it pop out more. You know what I mean? Like almost right away. You just go, wow, I didn't even see that, you know?
That's
So
just like
go ahead.
Sorry, that's just a quick way to kind of adjust the value in.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Because
makes sense.
I think most of us, I know I do this. I'm timid. You know, you're timid with value, right?
Yeah.
It's a super common problem. And then all of a sudden you go in and you throw that dark value and you go, wow, how did I not see that I needed that? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because I left the black and white part of this thing, I left it sort of like, I know I'm going to adjust this thing. So I leave it sort of like, there's a lot of places where I can punch the value and everything, but at some point I got to get started on the color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like going, I know this whole process, I think you see it. The whole process is just this constant adjusting, refining, adjusting, refining. So it's sort of like, I know I'm going to paint over this. I know I'm going to adjust values. I know I'm going to adjust color. I'm going to start brush work. I'm going to get rid of things. I'm going to reshape things all through that process. So it's called finding it in the paint, right? And you do it with traditional paint too.
Yeah.
Like when you do a portrait of somebody, you usually kind of landmark it out when you're doing it in oils. And then you sort of like, you readjust, recarve shapes. You might take the background and recarve the head shape because it's too much or whatever, or soften it. And all, you know, you're finding a lot of those shapes. I'm talking about when you do it alla prima, when you're just doing it in front of somebody in front of you. And you're adjusting all those shapes as you're moving along. It's like putting a puzzle together. It's like that shape needs to move over a little bit, and that one needs to, whatever. And that edge is too hard. You know, the back of the head back here is too hard. I think I'm going to soften that a little. It's just a constant refinement, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens to me is like, and why I'm trying to give you guys like, I want to set this up so you have the weekend to screw with it. What I would do is take it as far as you can, and then look at it the next day or whatever. You know, like you'll run out. Usually this is what happens to me. I'm working on something and I go, I don't know where to go anymore. I'm going to stop because I don't know where to go. And then I'll look at it. I don't know. It could be an hour later. It could be the next day. Especially if I do it the next day, I look at it and I go, wow, this thing needs this. Hang on. This thing needs this. Oh man, there's no value in this thing. And you'll see it, you know, and also flip it back and forth because you'll see it that way too, you know, where you're constantly, it's hard because your brain starts to accept something is looking good when it's not because you've just been looking at it too long. You know, that's all it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Your eyes just go, your brain goes, yeah, it's fine. And you're looking at it going, does that look right? And like, and your brain will just start going, yeah, it's fine. It looks fine. You know, I don't know why your brain does that. And then you flip it and you go, oh my God, the eyes are completely off and things are leaning this way. It's super weird. You won't see it. You know what I mean?
I think your brain is just getting to the point where like you're so knee deep into something, it's less prone to changing pretty much.
And I think
or being flexible.
I think there's a part of your brain, as much as you want to make a great piece, I think there's a part of your brain that's just going, it's fine. You know what I mean? It looks fine. And I think it's because your brain can't see it anymore. So it's just going, it's fine. But that's why you got
white noise.
That's why you got to flip it all the time. Oh, or in my, like, I used to keep, I think I still have one. I used to get one of those little, like compact mirrors, and I keep it in my paint bag when I go out just painting from life. And, you know, you can put it like right here and see your painting over here in it, and it'll flip it. And then you look at it on location and go, oh my God, but you can correct those things in the moment, you know, because you can see them. So I would even do that, you know, when you're learning, and you're always learning, you know, with your drawings and stuff. You're going to go do drawings on location and things like that. Keep a little cheap mirror in there. Just take a look at them in the mirror. And like, the more different ways you can look at it, the better. You know, you might, if you don't have a mirror, you can turn it upside down, put it on a chair and walk away 10 feet from it. And now you're seeing it upside down in a more abstract way, and just starting to see how things aren't balancing. Like, it's such a design driven process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And part of this is you have to train your eyes to be sophisticated. If you're not feeding your brain with sophisticated things, and by the way, I'm not knocking all this pop culture stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's really well done and all that kind of stuff, but you got to have another layer of input of things that you're looking at that are more sophisticated than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go to museums, go to design shows, go to things that aren't necessarily your thing, and look at them and go, I don't like this stuff, but be able to understand why it's good. You know, be able to go to an abstract show. I went to a painting show at MoCA, or actually it was from the Permit Collection years ago at MoCA. And I don't think I'd seen Franz Klein before that. And I saw these big Franz Klein paintings, black and white paintings. I'm like, those are badass. And they were totally abstract, right? But when you see a man in front of you, man, they are powerful, you know? Beautiful surfaces, you know, just big fat black and white mark making, you know, big fat oil paint, and it's just beautiful paint. Or Rothko, you know, just fields of color, you know, they're beautiful, you know, and people always go, oh, that's so easy. And I go, you try and do that, man. Because you are not going to be able to do it. Huh?
I was just going to say, the first time I saw Rothko in person, it totally took me much more than just seeing it like in images. Like images, I just didn't really get it at all. When I saw it in person, it was like a lot more impactful, and like, especially the textures too. You just don't really get like seeing it, pictures of it.
That's another point. Like you don't understand these paintings. That's a really good point, because you cannot really understand a Rothko unless you stand in front of one.
Yeah.
And then when you stand in front of one, it's kind of mind blowing, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes you go, I want to bring some of that shit to my stuff. I want to bring some of that stuff or that Klein stuff or whatever to my work. And it might be commercial work. That's fine. Like you might look at that Klein stuff and go, God, his edges are amazing, right? I want to get some of that. Then you go home and you find high-res images of it. You kind of study his brushwork or whatever, you know. And it's not a copy thing. He didn't invent brushwork, but maybe there's just something you're responding to with it. Or Rothko with those things, because I think anybody, and I'm hoping you guys are starting to do this when you're looking at things now and you're going, oh, look at that edge he did, or oh, I know how he did that in Photoshop, or wow, they do a lot of whatever. So when you look at a painting, when you're doing this, you know, every time I look at a painting or anything, I kind of start to deconstruct it. And Rothko is one of those guys where I look at it and I go, I know it's a color wash and it's a color field. I don't really know exactly how he did these things. You know what I mean? And they have such a personal, they're so personal, those things, that when people try and do it, it's like, what are you doing? Like, he owns that, man. Move on. He owns it. Forget it. You know what I mean? Now, be inspired by it, and that's all great, but he owns it. Forget it. You're not. I just saw one. There's a gallery up here. It's a bunch of hobby artists, and in the window, this person had done a Rothko knockoff, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, why even make work if you're going to do that? That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if you're a hobby artist, whatever, and you like doing that at home, totally cool. Go with it. Don't stick it in a gallery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, like I hear so many people do the same thing with like Pollock too. Like I went to my parents, and like that's just the same shit from them, you know?
Yeah, well, the thing with Pollock that's interesting, he's another one where, like, I've always liked Pollock, but and the thing that people don't get is they go, oh, I could do that. And I go, no, probably not. But here's the other thing. It's like, he invented that, dude. You know what I mean? Like, he invented that. So that you can never do. Yeah, you can get some paint, you can drip it, whatever. It's not going to be a Pollock. And he's another one where I think they have one at LACMA. I can't remember. There's a big one. I think it's at LACMA.
Yeah.
I remember standing in front of that thing and going, oh, I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you stand in front of it and you go, wow, you know?
When it like takes your whole eye perspective, like it makes it completely different. So,
What's really cool is if you stand there and just look at them for a while. I wasn't doing this on purpose, but I was just looking at it going, wow, that's cool, you know? And all of a sudden it goes, whoop, and it gets all this depth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden it just happened, you know, and you're going, God, that's just cool, man. Like, that's just cool. And then, you know, you can look at other stuff too, because you didn't do just drip paintings. You did a lot of cool stuff. But like, you know, there's so much stuff in the world to go look at, and don't corral yourself off, because I see that constantly, especially with entertainment students, where if I take them in front of a client, they're just going to go, no, who cares? What's that? Why is that a big deal? And it's like, oh my God, the only thing you understand is stupid digital superhero crap, man. I go, why would I, and if I was hiring, by the way, I looked for that when I was hiring. I looked for like the sophistication level of their thinking. So when they came in for an interview, and I never put anybody on the spot in an interview. I just want to have a conversation. But I would definitely steer it towards, you know, what do you like? You know, what do you look at? And if everything is, you know, if everything is entertainment people and stuff like that, I go, I probably don't want to hire you, because you're not going to bring anything to the table. You're just going to bring me cliches. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know, and go look at all sorts of things, you know, just, you know, and again, I think I've told you guys this. I used to drop in a mocha all the time. I still love doing this. I actually don't want to know what's showing. I just want to go in, because I've gone in and got my mind blown at mocha so many times. You know, and then sometimes you're going to look at work and go, not my thing. But then what you need to do is go, this is at mocha. This is a major institution. You need to know why that's at mocha. And sometimes it's smoke and mirrors and bullshit. You know what I mean? Sometimes it is. Does that make sense?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about the ship thing? And by the way, I know I'm throwing, like, now I just threw this idea of starting oil painting with the oil filter and this and that. I want you playing with these things. So I'm going to give you a little breathing room on this ship thing. What you guys have been doing basically is getting everything quicker than I expect. So I think we're fine. I know we're fine. But I have to give you guys some breathing room on these things. Otherwise, I just don't. If I zip through this thing in a day, I don't think you're going to grasp it at all. Does that make sense? So I like to have these discussions. I like to have a rolling sort of workshop flow going in here, where we're talking about work a lot and talking about other things and this and that and the other. And I know I go off on these tangents, but they actually are relevant. Okay, at least I hope they are. But I think they are. Does that all make sense? So everybody else is good. Everybody else has seen everything. Everybody else knows what's going on, right? Because what I'm expecting on Monday, today's Thursday, right? Yeah. Monday is that you guys have got, you know, started to dig into this painting thing. If you want to play around with that other thing, that's fine. Or you might want to like take this thing, you know, as we get to the finish of it, and maybe try the oil filter trick on it and then start going in and painting into it that way. But make sure you're always doing iterations, so you're not obliterating your original thing. Always do a save as, version 2, version 3, version 4, version 5. And if you save as, make sure it's doing this on your machine. When you do a save as, is like another PSD where you just save in the same format, and you go save as V2, version 2, or whatever you want. It should, you should then be working on version 3, and it'll just leave version 2. You don't have to go in and touch it. You just could save as it. Just double check it, make sure it's doing that up in the thing that it's switched over to the next version. Does that make sense? And don't be afraid to generate a billion versions. Who cares? Like, I do it as an insurance policy, man. And I mean, it could be a pretty simple job, and I still go in and I just save it, save as. Because if I totally blow something, it's kind of hard to blow it digitally, because you can just put on another layer or whatever. But there's finally, I'll get to a point, like I said, where I'll export and I'll flatten a version and just start painting over it, you know. But I still have those layered versions if I ever disastrously screw up the painting or something like that. But even when I go to the flat version, now I'm making a new layer and I'm starting painting over that. I'll probably generate a couple of layers there and so on and so forth, right? I just want to be free. And the thing I like I said about digital, is it makes me free. And if I'm working on multiple iterations of something, that makes me even more free, right? I got to double check now. All right, so I think this is the same. Hang on. All right, so all I'm basically doing today is I just want to go over any problems and things like that. I didn't want to push you guys today to start showing me stuff today because I feel like you should absorb stuff and hopefully get excited about it and then go, yeah, I'm going to kill this, and however you're going to do it, right? What are you guys talking about? Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. Hang on.
Hey, Mike,
What?
what's the latest on that animation teacher you interviewed?
We're setting up the interviews. We went through the narrowing down process, right?
Okay.
We went through the narrowing down process. We found our candidates that we want to interview. The interviews are going to happen. Oh, that's what I was going. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. So I think so then we were going to interview them in person, which is the only way I think you should do this. And we go, we'll do social distancing, blah, blah, blah. But then the school came back and goes, no, you got to do it on Zoom. And I'm like, okay, this is a person who could potentially be here for 20 to 30 years, okay? I take this really seriously. Me and Frank both take this really seriously. We want the best people we can get. And as far as I'm concerned, there is a person on there who I just think is monster talented. Anyway, so now we have to do through Zoom. So what they were saying was that, and I got the schedule, I think yesterday, is that we're going to start interviewing. I think it's next Thursday. So I was talking to John, the dean, and he goes, well, can you not have a class on Thursday and not have a class the following Thursday? And I go, yeah, I can do that for the good of that. I don't like it, but I can. But now it's going to be on Zoom. So I'm kind of going to, why can't we just schedule it at 2 in the afternoon? I mean, who cares? You know what I mean? I hate the idea of interviewing that way. And then the goal is that we get this all nailed down and the person is hired by August. Does that make sense? If that happens, then I'm assuming that we're going to put that person on schedule for fall. Yeah?
Okay.
Exciting. Ooh.
Yeah, super exciting. I like the people I work with. I like Frank and Phil a lot. I think we have a really good team. I think we're in the same thinking. And it's just nice to be working with people who are trying to get the best people. We're not politicizing it. I mean, I just want to get the best people. You'll find out when you go out in the world. Elan, you've probably already seen this. You work in the world, a lot of people, and I think it happens a lot with this kind of skills-based thing. People will actually not try and hire the best person because they don't want anybody outshining them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they surround themselves with crap. And it's like, I'm not intimidated by anybody. And I want the best person we can possibly get, and that's the only way you should hire. And the other idea is putting somebody into a position that, is supposed to be long-term. You want to make sure you've got the right person, that they're, really into this. I think it's really important that people are really into it and really going, I want this job. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Victor, did I answer your question?
Got it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'll talk to Frank about it today because I got to see him today. All right. So what I was saying is now I want you guys to go in this weekend and just dig into it. You have this chunk of time. You have, what's today? You have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have a chunk of time to sort of go in. Maybe if you're completely new to this, then you go in and you go, just going to watch. Okay. I watched, I don't know, 20 minutes of this thing. I get this chunk of information. I'm going to go do that. Then go back in and maybe take another chunk of information. Maybe do it that way. What I'm trying to do is give you enough breathing room to start playing a little bit. I really actually don't like lighting a fire under everybody this early on. It just doesn't make sense to me. I want you to hit your deadlines and all that stuff. By the way, I'm going to put just some name for the planet and the canyon stuff we were doing, and I'll grade that this weekend. So when you see a new assignment come up, don't panic or anything. It's just what we already did. I'm just going to put it on there so I can grade it. All right. That is an exercise. Again, that's just a 10-point thing. This thing will be a project because it's more involved, and we'll do. I'll put 100 points on that. Okay. But this will be done sometime next week, and then we'll sort of move out of this kind of thinking a little bit. Does that all make sense? Okay. Oh wait, I'm gonna look at the chat real quick. What are you guys talking about, Jim? Elin.
Oh, I'm just taking a Carl Ganas workshop right now.
A what?
Carl Ganas. He's one of the figure drawing instructors for a lot of the animation studios, and
okay,
Jim
great.
always recommends him. Yeah, Jim always recommends him, and since unfortunately the life drawing class at Fullerton College, I mean, like all our classes were cut short by COVID, so I felt like just keeping myself busy and not forgetting the figure drawing that I've learned.
You know
And
what?
it's a live Zoom. It's a
Let's
live Zoom session with Carl Ganas, so it's cool. I get to receive feedback from him and everything. So
Yeah, that's great. But what I want to do is, and maybe I'll just do this. Maybe I'll just do it here. I've been thinking about this a lot. I wouldn't mind getting together with everybody. I mean, obviously it has to be here, and trying to figure out something that we could do on here, drawing, and maybe it's just an open discussion thing where it's like, let's talk about drawing on location. Let's talk about drawing people quickly from life or whatever, and just go open discussion, sketch, whatever. You know what I mean? Leave it really open where people, I like having open forums. I think it's really important. It's why I like to have days like this where it's like you guys are basically working, but let's just talk about problems and things like that. And I don't care if it goes off into other things or whatever. I have to keep this basic class on course to what it is, but like I wouldn't mind having an open forum where it's just like I have a lot of my Saturday class, they go, hey, I'm having trouble with hair. And I go, okay, cool, I'll do a tutorial on hair. I'll do a little 15, 20-minute tutorial on hair. I can do this pretty quick. But we can also do that in real time. Does that make sense?
yeah, I'll be down for that for sure.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just put it out there and see if I get some feedback. I want to do a workshop on this clay modeling, right?
Yes, I want to do that.
But I really want to do that in person if I can.
Yeah, I get that.
It feels like that'd be a little hard to do online. I mean, I could do it, but anyway, there's just something about that. Anyway, so I'm probably for sure going to do that as soon as we can get back together. I just think that'd be really good. I think it'd be really good for 3D people. I think that, again, it's the same thing as this. It's like you want to go in and carve or sculpt characters and stuff. Start with clay, right? And then what I'm saying, what I want you guys to do is go, part of the reason I want to do the maquette thing is I want you then to take that and then go into Frank's class and scan it and pull it into the 3D environment, maybe refine it, or maybe just scan it, and then if you're in Frank's printing class, then print it. Does that make sense? Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that would be so valuable for you guys. And it would also teach you how to be more flexible with your 3D stuff. I used to have a sculptor that worked for me at Disney, monster sculptor, and this was, I don't know, 07, probably 07. And he came from clay, so he would just clay up a figure or whatever, then he'd scan it, and that was his starting point. I think now he's probably just 100% digital. Most of those guys had that transition phase. But the reason, and there's another guy I know that works at Disney, used to work with me at another toy company, another monster sculptor. He's over at Disney now, and all his stuff's 3D now. But, I mean, he's so knowledgeable about sculpting because for years, you didn't have 3D, and you just sculpted everything out of clay. Then you went to wax. Then you went to resin, and they really understand sculpting from the ground up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And sculpting helps your drawing. Sculpting helps
Yes,
your design.
it
Sculpting
does.
helps you with all this stuff intermingles. I know I say that over and over again, but it's so important. And I think a workshop is a good way to do it because I can introduce you to a lot of stuff in probably 6 weeks. Just do it once a week or something, where you can sort of get the principles of it, and then you can play around with it and add to that skill set and all that. But what I was going to say is, I eventually would like to do it as a class, but doing it as a workshop, what's nice about it is it takes you out of your school path, so you're not, again, chasing every shiny object, because that can really become a problem. Like when I was at Fullerton or Art Center, like I remember Art Center had a really cool print department, like what Todd does. And I'm like, man, I want to do that. That looks cool. But then I'm like okay, that's one of my electives. I'm not taking up one of my electives with that, because even though that is going to help me, I want to stay with my real hardcore drawing, painting, design, Viscom, all that kind of stuff. I want to really stay focused, you know, because at any school, there's a whole lot of stuff where you could just start chasing all sorts of ideas. And I do think at City College, one of the great things about it is that it's inexpensive. So you can try something, because if you go into something, you might find a whole different career path that you didn't realize was there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But try and stay focused, you know, but try and stay focused, but don't be rigid. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that City College is not costing a fortune. So I think that's actually valuable to explore a little bit. You know, if you go to, you know, once you go to a top tier school or anything like that, then you're exploring, and it costs you a lot of money. And especially if you shift majors or something, you know, you don't want to do that. I mean, sometimes you do, but. And what are you guys talking about with Jim? How come you said I was disappointed? Oh, because you
Because Easel's not there anymore.
oh, Easel.
Yeah. We were talking about Jim and life drawing and doing stuff like that.
You talk about the burning bridges with file names. What's funny about that place is I totally I hated that place, right? And it's not the product or anything. It was just the environment. I hated it. And I got to a point where I was basically just trying to get myself fired. I'm like, because I was running a department, and I'm like, I was sitting in my office.
That's hysterical.
I was sitting in my office screwing off, and I would just delegate all the work. And then I just keep something in there. You know, I keep something in the background, but I'd be sitting in there painting or whatever. And then if somebody came in to talk to me, I just flip it, you know, like I was super obnoxious to everybody. I just got to be a real jerk. And which is on me, by the way. I should have quit. But when I left there, so I left there not on good terms, obviously, because they finally go, you know, we had enough of crap. You're out of here.
No, really?
Oh, no.
And I'm like, thank God, you know, see it back, right? And then, but so then I came in to get my stuff. Oh, so then they go, okay, my office had a ton of stuff in it because I'd been there for like 3 or 4 years, 5 years. And they go, okay, you know, you're going to get your stuff tomorrow. And I go, I'll get my stuff whenever the hell I feel like it. And I left. And then, and I'm not usually an asshole like this, by the way. And then, I don't know, then they called me like a week later. They go, when you get your stuff? And I go, whenever I feel like it. And then they go, okay, well, it needs to be after 5. And then I called them up and I go, I'm going to go get my stuff Wednesday at 10 a.m. just to be an asshole. And so then I went in there, and anyway, it was a whole thing. But you know, obviously I have to leave all my work files on there. So whoever had to go through my work files probably found 1,000 files named like that. You know what I mean? They probably thought I was a nutcase, you know, because they don't know.
That's
They don't
awesome.
know what's going on. And they were super random. They'd be a whole sentence. You know what I mean? Like, this person's an asshole. And I had I never thought about anybody reading them or anything. I was just in the moment so pissed off, you know, but then you look back and you go, they got a whole file of my files in there that's what, because they probably still exist on some hard drive. You know what I mean? Because I mean, there was hundreds of thousands of files in there. Okay. And I also think that and I don't know, I think with the life drawing, it doesn't matter because I'm not teaching life drawing, but I think there is a way to do that online that could be somewhat effective. Okay.
Yeah, which is what I've found with Carl Ganas's workshop so far has been a little more effective because they're live streaming the model. While Jim's, we had to work off of pictures.
Yeah,
Which was
Yeah.
really hard.
I don't
Really
understand
hard.
I don't understand not live streaming the model. I don't understand that. And I understand, because if it was me, I'd probably hire somebody. Now I'd have to find out the rules around the nude modeling thing and all that. But if it's nude, if I couldn't do that, you know, they can be. I could do clothes stuff. I could do, you know, they could be. If it's a guy, they just could be in shorts. You know, whatever. And I
Yeah,
could still talk
exactly.
about it all. I think it'd be kind of fun to do to light the whole setup and everything in my living room. We got a huge living room here. It'd be kind of fun. And I wouldn't be averse to doing that, but I'm also gonna for my Saturday class, I'm going to do a lot of traditional demos. I have to start getting them done. But I'm also, I think I told you guys this, I'm lucky now I have that Wacom, that mobile Wacom. So I'm still going to go and do on location. I'm going to start doing them now, actually. On location videos of sketching people from light. Yeah? Somebody say something? Oh, Mina.
I don't
Mina,
think
you
so.
gotta, is it Mina has to take off early? You there? Somebody sent me a email that they have to take off early. I'm totally fine with that. Whoever it was, it's fine. Because I think you said it was around noon. Mina?
Yeah.
It was you, right?
Yeah, that was for yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, my boss just suddenly quit last week, and all of her projects, I'm taking charge of it now, and so it's just been a really stressful week for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Well, we can work with that. Anyway, forgot what I was talking about. And I'm going to do like a lot of live demos and stuff like that. I'm going to start them now. But so I can still, get the same information. Like I'll probably go down to the marina and do a live thing, but I'll do it digital, and I'm going to do some traditional stuff. But I want to be able to do those on location things, and just get a stockpile of those before the term starts. So as I put those things up, I'll tell you guys if you care about that stuff, right? I'll tell you guys stuff that goes up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I really do want to. And if you guys have any ideas about maybe just a free meet, like we just talked about, during the week, maybe at like 5 or something. If you guys have any ideas for that, put them in. I'm going to put a discussion board up just for this general stuff. I'll do it today. I'll probably get this video up later. I don't know if there's anything valuable in this video, but I'll put it up later. I have to go down and do a bunch of errands, and then I got to go out to Fullerton. So I'll probably put that up tomorrow, maybe, because I didn't. I got to go down. Anyway, I got to go down the hill. But I think that's it. So give me some ideas on that, you guys. I wanted ways to get together as a group, as a community, and not have any. It's not a class. It's not pressure. I think that's what is one of the things that's valuable about the ESOL nights is that you're going in there drawing. It's not a class. Nobody's hovering over you. Nobody's telling you what to do. But like I'm always there if you want some help, but I'm not there hovering over you telling you what to do or anything. And I think there's a value in that. And I think it could just be that we just call this an open forum and we just get together and talk and go over anything that you're having problems with. I mean, that might actually be just the way to do it. Does that make sense? And let it evolve into something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to put that probably tomorrow or the day after or something. I'm just going to put it out there as a, hey, maybe we could do this and see if I get a response to it. And if I do, I don't care if it starts off with 3 people. And by the way, I don't care about this. If it starts off with, or if one week we got 5 people, one week we got 2 people, next week it's 8 people, next week it's 30 people. I feel like that's how those things go. They ebb and flow. So somebody might jump in there and go, I got a question about this, so I'm going to go in. Sometimes there's not even anybody there. Who cares? It should feel like that, where it's like, I don't feel obligated to go to this thing. If I want to go, all I got to do is jump into the room and go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't like it when people do things like this and then they go, well, you guys aren't showing up, so the hell with it. And it's like, all right, well, if I do it for 4 weeks and nobody shows up, then I'll go, okay, whatever. But if I have a one-on-one with somebody, I don't care if it's one person. I think that I still have office hours. So I wouldn't mind using that sort of like it's just an open discussion, office hours-y kind of thing, and just do whatever you guys want to go over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, I've rambled enough.
Mike, I have one question. I just realized I didn't start the Fullerton College one with the ship. And I'm just
that's fine.
freaking out because I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck at the beginning. So the image you have is grayscale, and
Yes.
we just leave it like that, or do we adjust levels on it? Or
You can adjust. Okay, so before you start it, because what I usually do before I start it, because again, it's a Kickstarter for me, really.
Mhm.
Now I could do it either or. I could totally finish out that black and white thing. It'll make it go even easier. But I just know I'm going to change so much. So what I would probably do before I start it, maybe, is I might go into levels and like sort of level. I might go into contrast and push the darks a little harder. I might go in and burn a little bit of it so it's a little darker in certain areas and really adjust the values. I might do that. I don't think I
Okay.
did when I started it. I think I just went and then I just adjusted as I went. But yeah, you could go in there and use your burn tool would be good. Like if you just want to go,
Mhm.
you know, put it not so it's super dark, but just go
Right.
and go, I think I want to darken, deepen these shadows back here. Because then you could be real specific. Or you could go into your contrast and just go, I'm going to deepen all the shadows out and get it a little more contrasty. Yeah, you could do that. But what you don't, and what I would do is I would do that on a copy to make sure I always save the original.
Sure.
And then I'm also, I said, going to put a speed paint up of how I did that, how I went from the thumbnail all the way to
Right.
what you're seeing. The reason I'm not doing that as part of our thing is because that gets into full on painting. And it really, the reason I'm not going to narrate it or anything is because it's just like, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just making
Right.
shapes. Okay.
Mhm.
And you'll see it in there. But I think it's important to know, I want you to understand how I got to that too, without eating a bunch of class time. So I'll put that up for sure this weekend.
Okay.
And then, and I love to start things like that where, again, I have this obsession with organic. So I just go, I want to do something like this. I'm just sitting there and I like to use the flare. I love using those flare pins because they're fat and you can't do a lot of detail. I like to do flare pins in a fat Sharpie and just try some stuff. And I usually tend to do it. I don't know why it tends to be at breakfast. I'll just sit there and go, oh, that'll kind of work. Then I'll do a couple variations maybe. And then I just throw that in there and I start making shapes. So I'm kind of doing the drawing process and the shape process. And I love that. I just love that. I love building those shapes and everything. It's just fun. And then
You're talking digitally.
either or.
Either way. However
It doesn't matter. There's something that I really love. It's like this. Look,
Mm-hmm.
let me show you this real quick. This guy is a really good example of this. Let's find him here. Anytime you want to show somebody something, that's when your computer takes forever. So irritating. There it goes.
Of course. Doesn't cooperate.
Okay, hang on, I found him. I just got to find a video. Yeah, here we go. This is probably, no. Damn it, I know he has them on there. Guess let's go. There's a million of these on here. Oh, here we go. Nope. Oh, here we go. Let's see if this is a good one. So let's go. Sorry, I got to share my screen.
Oh, cool.
So what this guy's doing is he just goes, it's kind of the same way I paint on location. He just goes shape to shape. So he's just blocking in those big shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, when you look at his digital work, man, does it show that he works from life, man. So he's looking, what is he doing? He's looking for those big, giant shapes. Who was asking me about that earlier? Somebody was asking about that earlier. I'm just going for the big shapes and then moving into the small shapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what he's doing here. And I like it too, that I like his stuff because he keeps it really loose. And then look, you can see right here, he's blocking in those cars, right? Just a big blocky shape, because a car is a big blocky shape, right? Let's pull it forward. Look. Then he ends up there. Right?
Wow.
Really good example of just nice shape building. And nice loose brushwork and all that, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
And by the way, I'll get out of all this discussion of painting once we get past all this stuff. But right now we're talking about painting. So I think these things are great. I think his digital work is insane. You know, I think this stuff's insane. But if you look at his digital work, man, he really brings that sense of light into it. And it's because he's out cataloging all this stuff so he can bring it into his digital environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys, if there's no more questions, I'll let you go. And I want to put a discussion board up. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. That's good.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, you guys, so get to work. I want to see work on Monday. I don't expect it to be finished at all. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Will
Yeah.
do.
Okay, I'll see you guys Monday morning on time. You guys have
See you Monday.
all right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Sounds